All right, here we go, and welcome again to Danger Aware Animation Department. I am Ray Howell, and I am the Chief Information Officer for Danger Aware. And if you didn't know, over the last 4 years, I have been learning how to do animation using Moho Pro. And thank you, Lost Marble, for the donation of the software. We appreciate that. So today we're going to be working on a new character, a complex character. But before I get into the complex character, I want to show you one of my simple characters. So 2 years ago, I created our Danger Aware astronaut. Now, I didn't come up with the idea for the astronaut, nor the respect my personal space saying that we use on our apparel and such. If you go to Danger Aware website, and if you scroll down the page, you can see our astronaut, our respect my personal space astronauts. And so I didn't come up with the respect my personal space saying. Our first secretary, I believe, did, or her sister. They had used a astronaut that they found on Canva or something like that, and it just wasn't really an impressive astronaut in my opinion. I wanted something that would appeal to kids. So here's my version of the astronaut and what we've done with it. So if you'd like to get some of our apparel, just visit our website and click on the link, and that will take you to this page, which lets you launch the Teespring channel, where you can get the Respect My Personal Space notebook or apparel and so on. So back to animating. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. So this is our Respect My Personal Space astronaut. And you can see, if I turn off the astronaut, you can see the bones are very simple. There's not a lot there. There's probably as much on the hose as, you know, almost the rest of the body. The astronaut is very simple. Just flip the arms up, the hand flips back and forth like this, the legs move, and just to add a little bit, I made it where the foot rotates on the leg, but it really doesn't make a lot of difference, but it does show if you're animating the character. And then, of course, all the panel is preset to this color. If I want to change the lights during animation, I can select an indicator, and then I can change its color. Now, what you're seeing there is a gradient that I was using. If I want to change that color, now I've got to go into Style and select the object itself, and then right now it says blue lights on, so I can go down and I can change it to green light on. So now when I go back, you can see it's now a green light instead of blue. It's how I had to work with this simple character if I wanted to alter things while I was working on an animation. This is a simple character. You can see we can move the arms, the hands, the legs, and then the head rotates, if you want to call that a rotating head. So that was what I did and was able to do 2 years ago. And when we render this, it doesn't look bad. The white is actually fuzzed out there, and so this looks pretty good, and it worked good for a good character. But it's pretty simple. There's not a lot you can do with it. So I wanted to make it more complex. So I did. Recently I've upgraded it, and here is now my complex astronaut. So you can see there's not a lot changed, but you can see there's a couple extra bones, and there's also the digital DNA. If you've watched my prior videos, you know if I put the controls on the left here, it's digital DNA. If I put it on the right, it's puppeteering controls. And the bones on the character are, of course, the character's bones, which allow the character to move. So on this character now, we need to be in the animation layer to see all this. So I can flip the hand back and forth. I can bend the elbows now, and you can see the panel is all white. because each one of these lights have their own lever or bone, which allows me to set it to green, yellow, red, blue, white, broken, and shattered with all those colors. No blue, I think. Just red, green, and yellow. And then shattered. And black and white, of course, because of coloring pages. We can't create coloring pages if we can't bring the character that we've designed to strictly black and white. So, on this character, you can see there's not a lot digital DNA going on here because I didn't want to have a bunch of different astronauts. I wanted it to be the same astronaut, but maybe different colors. And so that's what I've done. So we can go in and change the colors of the visor and the helmet and the ears or the accessories, the plates on the chest, the ears, and the antenna, the suit itself, and the feet and hands, and the air hose, and the straps. And then I've improved the head turn, so as you can see, it now looks almost 3D as it turns its head. And I've created a backside, so we can flip it around to the back, and I've added little jet streams here so we can show that the character is using the jets to maneuver. And these lights here are the same lights from the front, they're just in different positions, and there's not as many, of course. So that's the new, more complex astronaut. That makes this character a lot more usable because now I can move the thumbs up, go like that, or when reaching around, I can go, oh, I need that thumb to be the other direction, so I can flip a switch or check whatever. So that's the point of doing more complex characters. You can see all these little bitty bones. Those are all from those lights we saw when it's on the chest. So I reused those same controls, but I got fancy and I made them tiny if they weren't represented on the back. So here's those bones that work the lights that we can't see right now from the front side. So if we turn it on to the front side and we turn on each of these different lights, we'll be able to see that they're lit up in the back as well, that's all. And this rotates now. And this is the hard one. I put this in the wrong place because you got to get close to get to it to turn it off and on. But now we can see all of these have a different color. No, that's good there. So now when we flip to the back, we've got colored lights on just for certain things. So I left a lever on where that light is, simply changed the size of the displayed light, that's all. And added the backpack and the air hose on the other side and the antenna on the other side. Now I paired the antenna on this side to the antenna on this side, and that's because when I started animating the character, I didn't always decide whether it was facing the camera or away until after I had already done the speech. And so when I'm doing the character speaking, now when I flip to the backside, it's the same action. It doesn't have to be redone. So that's the only complex rigging I've done on that, as far as, a bone moving that you don't control directly. So that's the complex astronaut. We can now create any color astronaut in just a few seconds, save those settings on the first frame of the animation, and then go from there. If you want to see the astronauts in action, go to dangeraware.org, scroll back down by the apparel, and right above on the left is the 7 astronaut puns. So you can see what I've done with that. So there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. I don't need to save the changes. And same here. I'm going to save the changes. So here is our new character. This is a new species, the large red ant. They've actually shown up in the Bugillager's poster. If you notice on the first one, I had a big red ant, and that was a singular character. So if I wanted different characters, I have to make each one individually. So I decided, well, I'm going to rework the character. And then I decided, well, I'm going to rework the character ID, because if you noticed on the old ones, I had the alphabet going down and the letter numbers going up. Well, now they all go the same direction. I can show you that there. I also brought them in closer to each other, made it a little more compact. So now we can get the entire alphabet on the screen at once if we need to do the coloring or whatever. And these are all colored according to the bones. So we're going to go back and turn the masking back on. Alright, so here I've got the new ant, and I've based it on other characters I've built before and trying to conserve effort. The better I design my character, the easier it is to design the next one. And so on this one, I've spent a lot of time building all the parts, putting in the bones, and getting everything ready before I rig anything. How do I rig my characters and how do I set them up? Well, first you got to draw your character, or take another character and start altering it to become a new character. And that's what I'm hoping this puppet here will become. Because if we turn off my character, we can now see that we've got this bone layout that would work well for many insects, where if we need another set of arms, we just delete a set of legs and add another set of arms. The rest of the puppet could remain the same, but we can change the way it looks by just changing the parts around. So we can, once I'm done with this character, I'm hoping this will be the model for my next character that I will build based on this same insectile layout. Because I've done a lot of research on insects lately, and they all basically have the same 6 legs, thorax, abdomen, head, antenna. They're just in different places and different sizes, different colors, and so on. So this character is not rigged at all. All the bones are in place, and I've got the character laid out. So as you can see, I've got this target. The target was set up so that I get to get the bones and the body parts to create perfect rounds, so that the rotation of the joints never distorts. So I've had many characters where when you move the elbow, you get the elbow sticking way out, or the knee, the leg kind of disconnects, and so on. So I'm trying to learn to eliminate those errors. And one way of doing that is to make sure that when you have an overlapping joint, you create a perfect circle with the joint. So if we look here at the character upper body, and here's the left arm, and we're going to go to the bicep. So you can see the bicep completes this half of this green circle here, which is on my target. So if I turn the target off, the green circle goes away. So I made it transparent so I can see what I'm working on behind it and through it, and yet I can make everything work out. So whatever I do to the biceps here where it comes to the elbow, I need it to overlap. Okay? Now that works well with an insect because of the segmented body. We don't need to worry about this looking like it's one continuous arm. And if that's a concern, don't worry about it. I'll teach you how to deal with that when we get to the fingers, because as you can see, the fingers are here, but there's 2 parts to each finger. And so just like the elbow forearm connection, you can do an elbow forearm connection the way I do my fingers, where your arm looks like a singular arm. You can also do that with patches. Moho provides patches that you can put over joints like this, but I find that that adds another layer of complexity to the puppet. And even though my puppet is very complex, I try to keep each element as simple as possible, because in simplicity we can get to complexity. So with that said, we can see over here we've got my character ID, so that's the number letter system up here, and so far we haven't done anything with it. So I think I might start with this because it's something I want to carry through to other puppets, and I don't want to have to repeat it again and again and again with each puppet. So I want to create a base puppet that I can then use to build more characters from, and have as many things on that base puppet already completed before I start changing what the character looks like. Okay? Then we've got the upper body and the lower body. Well, why do I separate the upper and lower body? Well, that comes from wanting to do animated layer sorting. So if we go into the upper body here, you can see I've got this little set of cascading layers coming out of this folder. And what that's indicating is that I've gone into the depth sort, and I've enabled animated layer order. What is that? What is an animated layer order? Well, if you've worked with Moho very much, you understand that whatever is above in this list is on top on the scenery. So the wings are the farthest behind everything in this character, and that means that they're going to be at the very bottom of the character. Here's the wings. So I try to separate things into groupings so that it's easy to utilize or not utilize. So if I wanted to get rid of the wings, I can easily just turn them off. So then we've got the segmented abdomen, and I've got each segment layered, and the tip. The tip's got a slight kind of rounded point on it to represent the stinger, but in reality it's just a bunch of circles. Each one is just a different size, and going front to back. Now, with my older characters, I had these laid out going down to the ground, but we don't want to do that. When we design our character for being a puppet, we want to set anything and everything at the midpoint to where we want them to be in the final puppet controls. When I was a kid, I did marionette puppets. So the little sticks with the strings, and I even made my own puppets. I made a spider puppet with a very specialized controller that allowed me to make the spider walk with the 8 legs, and it really looked like it was walking. My sister built me a wonderful puppet, and then I had a dog that tore it up and destroyed it, and I'm so sad about that. But I know puppets, not as a professional, but I've played with them a lot as a kid. So when I'm doing my animation puppets, that's the way I'm thinking. And so when I build my puppet, I need the bones for the joints and the parts of the body that are going to be moving in relation to the center of the body. And then for specialized controls, like controlling the mouth and the eyes and the legs around the torso and the arms around the torso, that's where these controls to the right come in. Imagine this as a puppeteer's saddle, okay? And we would start, let's go to our target. We'll use target. And I'm just going to draw here. So if I was a puppeteer and I was going to puppeteer this character, I would make a stick like this, and I would have a cross stick for the arms, okay? So there'd be a cross stick here for the arms, and then there would be a cross stick for the legs, and then there would be a cross stick for my facial features. And I could use each of these strings. One string supports the entire puppet. That's, in this case, this core bone, pin bone right here, that supports the entire puppet. If that bone moves, the puppet moves. Everything on the puppet moves. Okay? So, imagining this as a puppeteer's control box or control handle, you would be holding the puppet here, handle here, and plucking these strings with your fingers, both hands, while animating the character to do whatever you wanted. So that's how you can manage a complex puppet in reality, okay? So now we're going to do that all here. I'm going to just get rid of my control board here, because all we need are the actual string connections. And that's what you need to think of each of these as. Each of these is a string to the puppet making a change during the animation. That way I don't have to keep coming back over here and making changes over here. I can make those changes right here. And then finally we're going to get to digital DNA, and that's these over here, which will make alterations to what this character looks like. So we can end up with a fat character, a skinny character, a tall character, a short character, big head, small head, and so on. So that's what all of this is going to be about. If you want to stick around for all of it, it's going to take a lot of work. These videos generally end up being about 8 hours in total. Hopefully this one will be less. And that's with the character already laid out and the bones laid out. But my hope is that this particular puppet will become my base puppet for all future Bugillager characters. Maybe not all, but for many of them. When you're using digital DNA and you're going to change the various parts of the puppet, precision matters. That is why I came up with the targeting, because when I started applying digital DNA, when an elbow wasn't quite positioned properly to begin with, and then I applied digital DNA, the problem that I had created in my initial layout was made worse. With Moho, each of these bones can be affected and affect other bones in a relational manner. And so by adding these bones for the forehead, for example, or for where the eyes are positioned, you might be thinking, well, what do you need those for? You can do all that without that. Yes, you can. But if you want to do a head turn, and you also want to be able to make that head either bigger or smaller, if you don't have these anchor bones for the sides of the head ends up flipping over on itself. And it's not pretty, and it doesn't do well in the animation. So that's why I've got these extra bones on this character for these here, here, and here. Shoulders and hip bones are not technically needed for a simple character. You can just stick the legs anywhere you want, and those bones will parent to whatever they're parented to. They don't have to be attached to another bone. You can put a bone out anywhere and just parent it, and it will stay there based on where you parented it. So if we look at the parenting on these bones, let's see, you can see what I've done here. All of these puppeteering controls, they don't attach by string directly to the puppet, they attach to the core control bone, pin bone over here. So the pin bone that moves the character is locked to this pin bone over here, which I'm also using to lock these controls. Now the reason I do this is because it allows me to not have these all going over to the character. And all of these going over the character is not primed, but the only other way to get around it would be to add another pin bone over here and then tag that pin bone over to here. And again, simplicity in multiplication is how you get to complexity. You don't want to get to complexity all in one action, or all in one movement, or all in one feature. You want to take things in small steps to get to the ultimate complexion, so that if there's a problem, you have to troubleshoot it. You're only troubleshooting a small thing, not a large thing. Okay, I hope that helps. So here we are going to start. Before I start rigging the body parts, I'm going to do the numbers for my digital DNA, and then I'm going to save that character so that I can have that for the future, for future characters, and have this part, at least the binding to these, already completed, and it's something we won't have to worry about again. Now, I've been thinking, we do have a Patreon page, and I've been thinking of how to set that up to get people over there to donate to us. And so what I've been thinking is once I've completed this puppet, I may be putting it over on Patreon, where if you're a monthly subscriber for $10 or more a month, you can download our character, and or new characters also as I come out with them. If you like that idea, comment below. Let me know what you think. So anyway, let's get started on these. Now, each of these has a name. I've already gone through and set skull size, eye size. These are all based off of a prior character. So I didn't just come up with this for this character. I took our Sembelant relative character and simply copied all of his digital DNA over, and we're going with that. So I reworked all their numbers and everything. So that's what we're going to do now. So to do that, we need to create an action for each of these bones. And as you can see, I've got a restriction on how far the bone can move. Those you can set to be whatever you want. You can make these rotate all the way around. The more rotation you have, the easier it is to be exacting on your fine tuning. So if I wanted these to be extremely exacting, I could go into the bone constraints and change it from -70, where we end up with a 360-degree circle that we could use. But I'm not going to do that, and -70 is the standard that Moho has when you open this tool. If you first come in here and just create a bone and go to angle constraints, it's already going to be set for -70 and 70. Not sure exactly why they did that, but that's what I'm going to use on my digital DNA. Now, I don't use the same constraints everywhere else. So that's just on my digital DNA. And what that does is that gives us 141 positions or degrees that we can move this bone as a lever and stop at any of those positions. So that basically gives us 141 alterations at one alteration per degree. Do we have to stick to that pattern? No. We can make it anything we want. We can have the rotation be anything we want, and we can have the range be anything we want. I just like to have it be synchronized for ease of comprehension, calculations, and so on. So now, we're going to create an action for the first bone control here, and that's, we need to be in the bone layer, so here, and we create that bone, we select it, and come over here and create a new action. And that is DNA skull size. So we're going to go OK, and then we're going to rotate that bone all the way to the left so that it's at the extreme to the left for position 1. And then we're going to jump to 141, and that's what I was talking about. We have 141 positions because from minus 70 to 1, that's 70 positions, and from 1 to 70 is another 70 positions. But Moho also uses 0, and so we get 141 total, not 140. So whatever your range is, you want it to be an odd number because you want the center to be 0 with your range being on each side of it. So at 70, we're at the maximum number for the left-hand side. 71 would be 0, and then from 72 onward would be from 1 to 70, and that ends up at 141. So at 141, we want to rotate this bone all the way to the right, so now it's at its maximum range. Now we're going to go back to 1 on the timeline, position 1, and at position 1 we're going to want A and 0, but we need to make it set. So we're going to go into alpha, and we're going to grab the entire group of lettering, and so we want to draw a box around them, and then hit T, and so now I can move those letters up and down as I wish, and I'm simply going to hold shift and grab A, and that sets this position. And we're going to do the same thing for the ones, and you can see it's already selected, so I'm going to hold shift and select it, and that sets points, that sets it at 0 for this position on the timeline. Alright, so then we're going to work through each number. So at position 2, we're going to want number 1 to show up in our little box here. So what I've done is I've created a mask. Character ID of skull size is the mask. You can see the masking here. The viewport is the little box through which we can see the letters and numbers, the alphanumerics, and now we can see those through the mask in this box. Now I'm going to move the number 1 up so that we can see it in our box. And we want to get it as perfectly positioned as we can. And so there's 1. Now we're going to move to the next position in the timeline, which is position number 3, frame 3, and we want to be able to see the number 2. And we're just going to continue till we get all the way to 9. Advancing the timeline and then moving the number strip up so we get the right number shown. Because we're using 0 at position 1, we're always going to be 1 number behind our frame or position on our timeline. So we're on frame 8, we're seeing the number 7, and you can see we've populated each of these positions. So now we're doing 8, which is position 9, or frame 9. And then, of course, the last digit, number 10, is the digit 9. So now we've got where we move along the timeline, we get each of the numbers instantly that we want. So we're going to need to do that to the maximum possible of 141. So we're just going to copy this group here. We don't want the position 0, we just want 1 through 10. And we're going to copy that, Control C. Then we're going to move to position 11 and Control V and paste. Then we're going to move to position 21 and paste. And move to position 31 and paste. And move to position 41 and paste. And move to position 51 and paste. Move to position 61 and paste. Move to position 71 and paste. And at this point, I'm just going to copy all of these. Control copy. Go to 81 and paste. And so now it goes all the way to 159. So we're well past 141. We could cut it off at 150. You know, it wouldn't matter. But we're never going to go to that position. We're only going to stop at 141. So now, as we move through, we're going to get our numbers. 1 through 0, 1 through 0, 1 through 0, 1 through 0. Just like that. Or 0 through 9. Again and again and again. So now, we go back to the alpha. And with alpha, we only want it to change every time the numbers run out. So we're starting on A, and it'll be 11 before we change to B. So again, we need to, oh, we've got it selected. So now we can pick up and move. Holding Shift keeps you from moving left and right if you're wanting to move up and down. So I'm holding Shift, and we're going to bring up B, and then we go to position 21. And it's easy to know because it's going to be a 0 here. And then we want to see C pop in. Then we're going to go to 31. And we want to see D. And 41. E. 51. F. And 61. G. And 71. H. Now 71 is our mid position, so keep that in mind. And 81, I, and 91, J, and 101, K, and 111, L, and 121, M, and 131, N. Now, here's the dilemma. At 141, which is our last position, but that's going to be our last position for each of these numbers, each of these different character ID DNAs. And I don't think I really want to see O anything. O1, O2, O3. It's only going to be OO, but I really don't want to see O0, O0, because then we have to either say O0 or whatever. So I'm going to skip O altogether and then move on up to P. So now, as we jump along our timeline, we can see that we've got A1, B1, C1, D1, and so on. As we move, we finally get our letter to line up at the exact time it starts the numbering. But as you can see, our letters are drifting from each position. Well, there's an easy way to fix that. We simply need to make sure that it stays in position for the next letter. So I'm going to copy the whole row here, and I'm going to go to 10 and paste that whole row. And so now I've duplicated the lower digit at the higher position. So now the A will stay until it switches to B, and B will stay until it switches to C, and C will stay. And so now we have our numbering for the movement of our lever for our bar. And here we got P0. That's what I said. We're never going to go to 142. It's just not going to happen. So 141 is our maximum position. And so now that is done. I'm finished with that digital DNA being on the numbering system. So now if we go into our timeline and we move this lever, and you can see it starts off at HO because it's in the center. And I call that the Christmas position. It just worked out that way. I didn't plan it. And then we go all the way to the left, and that's the AO position. And that's for this particular DNA. And the final position is PO. So we've got 141 different positions. And now not only can we use the lever and use degrees to stop on a particular one, we can now use the lettering and the numbering to make sure we're stopping exactly where we want it to be. So there you go. That one is done. Now we need to do all the others. But we don't have to do them all the hard way, the way I just did the first one. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into alpha here on the digital DNA on the skull. We're going to open that, and we're going to copy what we got on this alpha line. Now we only need the red bar, the line that's red. So we're going to copy that, because what's on the black line is the same thing at the moment. But as we add more animation, there might be other things on the black line that are not on the red line. So remember that when you're copy pasting things. If you only want what's related to what you're currently working on, make sure you're only selecting the red line. Alright, so now I've copied the lettering part of the digital DNA. So I'm going to go back to the main line. I'm going to choose the next bone. Hit B for bone. Grab that bone. And let's get back to the main character here, because we need to be on the bone layer here to create the action for the bone layer. So we're going to create the action. This is digital DNA for eye size. So we're going to click OK. And we're going to go down here to alpha on eye size. And you can see it's selected. And I'm just going to Control V. And we now have our lettering moving for us, but it's not correct. Why is it off? Let's see here. Let's grab the layer for A, and we're just going to bring that down and right there. So that should fix that. So there we go. Yep. So now our lettering is in the right place and happening. So now we can jump back and forth, copying the numbers and pasting. But instead of doing that, I'm going to go through each of these and create the next action and paste the alpha, so that I've got the alpha done. Then I'll go back and do the numerics. So now we go B for bone, select the next bone, create an action for it. Alright, there we go. So now my alphanumerics are complete for identifying a character that's digitally altered by DNA to another character. So we can close up the character ID. And we can save the character. So we want to go back to the main line. Alright, so as you can see, they're all at the PO, and let's just rotate. Oops, I want to move the character. Rotate each one of these. So we go from A0, and we can go through each number. Same there. All we gotta do is make sure that it's working, because it is the same code or programming in each action. So now I don't have to worry about redoing all of that work I just did again for future puppets if I continue to use this puppet as the base. So we're going to clear animation. Back to the main frame and save. And this is going to be number 7. And now we're going to begin rigging the body parts to the skeleton bones. So we've got the skeleton bones in the center for the character itself. Then we've got the puppeteering bones to the right, and the digital DNA to the left. And the digital DNA is done, and for now I'm just going to turn off the ID, and I'm going to hide the shy bones. So now we're just working with a regular character and its puppeteering bones. So let's just get started. Open the body up here. And we're going to start with the right arm and the right hand and the right thumb. We need to attach different body parts to different bones, and looks like that thumb is in the wrong place. So I need to move the thumb parts right now. So G to grab, shift to grab both, hit T, and now these just move to this bone. And put them on the wrong circle, that's all. So right there. And that's where the thumb belongs. Now, we've already got the bones named, and we no longer need the target. So let's go ahead and get rid of the target. And gotta be in the construction layer. Let's get rid of all animation. And see, I moved that thumb in animation, not in construction. So let's go back to the thumb again. And grab everything. And move it forward. Alright, now I can go B for bone, grab this bone, hit I, and we're going to go to the edge of this and bind those points. Hit B for bone, grab the tip bone for the thumb, hit I, grab the points for the tip of the thumb, and bind those. And we're just going to do that for each part. Now remember, I told you I was going to show you on the fingers how we can do a joint without patch over the joint. So here we are, we're going to do the forefinger. And the forefinger, as you can see, is made of two different parts. Well, maybe you can't see. Let me turn off the other fingers. So now you can only see the middle finger. And you can see that it's got the base and the tip. And if we zoom in on these bones, you can see there's a cluster of them there. And if you've watched my videos before, you know that I'm doing this so I can do a rotational hand. And this is the forefinger, this is the middle finger, and this is the pinky finger. These allow them to extend and retract, and then the secondary part. So we're going to grab the base bone for the index finger or forefinger, and then we're going to hit I and bind this part of the finger, and we're going to bind those points. And then we're going to go to the bone for the tip, hit I, and we're going to grab the whole tip of the finger and bind those points. There we go. So now, if we move that bone, which we can do from here, you can see that the finger moves. And as you can see, when I rotate the finger, it still looks like it's all one finger. And as you can see, the way I've done that is I made the rotation on the base to be as close to a perfect circle as possible. And then on the tip, I cut it straight down and across. There's no point here, and it's flat. And that flatness allows the strokes to overlap. And then I hid this line just using the hide line button. So there's what it would look like normally. And then as I moved it, that definitely doesn't look like a single finger. And I could do it like, make this rotational, but then it's going to look like a segmented finger. So this allows us to have a segmented finger that looks like a singular piece of material. Now, why is that important? Because when I stretch these bones, it's going to stretch all of this as well, and we need that to stay in position. In fact, we're going to need another point here at this rounding, and we're going to bind that point to the bone so that that point cannot stretch. So we'll be doing that later. So there we go, we've got that one. We're going to go to the next finger, mid finger. we can hide the forefinger. And now we're going to grab the mid finger bone, B for bone, and we're going to grab the pink one or coral one. There we go. Now we hit I, grab these points, bind them, hit the forefinger, the mid finger tip, B for bone, then I, and the tip of the finger, and is bound. So now that middle finger is functional. We're going to go ahead and turn that back off. Go to the little finger, hit B for bone, grab the green bone, hit I, grab this finger joint, and bind the points. Grab the tip bone, hit I, grab this, and bind those points. Now you may be wondering, why are all these fingers stacked on top of each other? Because I want to be able to rotate the hand both up with the thumb up and with the thumb down, so that we can have the full functionality of a hand. And simulated anyway. So there, we've got the fingers and all done. So we're going to move to object in hand. Now object in hand is invisible, but it can be replaced with anything so that it is in the hand of the character. And I want that object to be here in the thumb area. So, because I moved the thumb, I need to move the object. In fact, let's just go ahead and put it at the thumb joint. And it will also be bound to the palm bone. So we're going to go B for bone, and then the entire layer of the object will be bound to that bone. And the same thing with the palm. The entire palm will be bound to the palm bone. So I don't need to go in and take each individual part to make sure it travels with it. So then the forearm, it's easy. It's the whole forearm goes with this bone. The biceps, the entire biceps goes with this bone. Then we're going to do the left arm. So we go into the thumb on the left hand. Hit the B for bone, I, and bind. B for bone, I, and bind. Forefinger, grab the forefinger base bone, hit I, select this, and bind. Forefinger tip, B for bone, grab that bone, hit I, and bind. Mid finger, B for bone, grab the middle bone, middle finger base, hit I, bind. Small finger, oh, I didn't do the tip. B for bone, grab your tip bone, hit I, coral, and I, and these points, and bind. Now we go to the small finger, hit B for bone, grab the green bone, hit I, bind the base of the finger, grab the green tip bone, hit I, and bind the fingers. And then for the object, it is going to be bound by the full layer to this bone. The palm also to the entire layer to this bone there. The forearm to this bone. And the biceps to this bone. So now our arms and fingers and hands are all bound and should be fully functional. So let's just stop and save our work. And then we're going to test it in the animation layer. Now we can test, make sure that the hand, we missed one finger there. So this is why we always test. Which finger did I miss? Okay, so I apparently missed the forefinger. Oh, that's the forefinger. That's, oh, the middle finger. I bound the wrong parts to the wrong finger. I messed up somewhere. Alright, let's go back. So mid finger. I'm on the mid finger, now I want the mid finger bone. So B for bone, I, and select, and then bind. And B for bone, I, select, and bind. And now the little finger. So B for bone, I, bind, B for bone, I, and bind. So now the hand should be working. So we're back to the bone layer. And palm moves, thumb moves, and we got the pinky, and the middle, and the forefinger all working. So that hand works, that arm works, and that shoulder works. So we're on to the next one. So test this. So there, the palm moves everything. So that means I must have bound them to something. The thumb seems to be working. The pinky, the middle, and the forefinger. So now we've got our completely posable hand, and as you can see, we can already do a lot with this. So, but we're going to get to doing more with it once we get into puppeteering controls. So now we're going to move on to the head. Now the head, we've got the right antenna. So we've got to do different bones, so different parts. So we go B for bone, just select this bone, hit I, select this part. Now if I hit the whole bone, it'll select all of it. We can do that, we can bind all of it. Then grab this bone, hit I, and then draw a box around just the points we want to move with that bone. So there we go. Then we go to the left antenna, B for bone, grab this bone, hit I, we'll go ahead and just bind the whole thing, and then grab B for bone, grab this bone, hit I, and then drag around just those points and bind those. So now we should be able to move our antenna up and down and the end points. So there we go. Next is the right eyebrow. So again, we go B for bone. Now this one is one singular object, but two bones. So I'm going to go I and drag around the first part of them and bind those. And then B for bone. Grab the second set of points by dragging around them and then binding those. So you can bind a single object to multiple bones. You can bind multiple bones to a single object, or you can bind individual objects to individual bones. So very versatile. So now we're going to do the right eyebrow. Hit B for bone, hit I, grab the last four, bind those. B for bone, grab the tip bone, hit I, and drag across those and bind those. So there we go, we've got our eyebrows done. And now we're ready to do the right eye. Now, the right eye, I don't want to do individual parts here. I'm going to just make sure that the right eye stays bound to the bone at the core of the head. So the right eye is bound to the head, and the left eye is bound to the head. And the same with the mouth, we're just going to bind it to the head. And so now if we move the head, oops, that's not to move the eye that way. But now if we move the head, all those parts are moving. We didn't get the skull yet, so let's do that. And we're going to bind the skull by the whole layer to the head bone. So now, if we move our head, everything moves with it. Alright? So next, we've got the upper thorax. Now, the reason we had to separate the upper thorax and the bottom thorax is because I want to rotate the arms around the body. To do that, you've got to be able to use the animated layer sort. And so I forgot to complete that analogy earlier. And as you know, whatever is above here is above in our image. So if I were to move this antenna behind the skull, most of it's going to disappear from what we can see because it's going to be behind the skull, even though it's still part of the body. So you can see here, it's no longer showing in front of the skull. Well, when we turn the body parts, we want the arms to go around behind the body, and the same with the legs. But you can only do that with one feature per layer. So if I did the legs and the arms, I could rotate them both around the torso together, but I couldn't do just the arms or just the legs. So to do them separately, I had to separate the lower body from the upper body and then employ the animated layer sorting for each part so that I can do the arms around the body and I can do the legs around the body. And the hands themselves are also layer sorted so that I can sort the fingers. So when we rotate the hand, the forefinger will be where it belongs in relation to the other fingers. And then we can move those around on top of each other. That's where the sorting will come in handy during animation. If we don't apply that animated layer order before we do the construction of the character, that rotational doesn't work right. We can't move these around and have them change order during animation. We have to enable this. This creates more memory for this character. This makes the character more complex just by adding that feature, whether you use it or not. But we're going to be using it, believe me. So, we're now down to our lower body. So, wait, we didn't do the upper thorax. So we're going to do the upper thorax. So the upper thorax has multiple bones here, and including a small one here in the middle of the neck. So if I go B for bone and select B, the neck bone here, I can rotate. Oops, I'm not on the bones. Let me go to the bones. Here we go. So B for bone, I want to get this little bone here in the center. And so I use shift to get rid of the one bone. So I select both bones like this, and then I can use shift and select the bone I don't want. And that leaves me with this bone. Now this bone we're going to put constraints on. So we're going to go to bone constraints, and we're not going to do it by angle, at least not yet. We may in a moment. But before we do that, we're going to control its angle by what the neck bone does. So we're going to tell it we want to control the angle by the neck bone. And that's going to work at 20%. So as the neck bone moves, this little bone is going to move 20% of what the neck bone moves. So as you can see here, I'm moving the neck, and this bone here is moving, but not nearly as much. Okay? So I've got the constraint on the neck bone, but not on the bone for the shoulders. Well, now we're going to go back. Can I select this bone? Yes. Then and we're going to bind the entire torso to this bone for now. So I'm going to bind all those points. Then B for bone, and I want just this middle bone. So I'm going to shift and get rid of this other bone. And then I, and these 2 points will be bound to that bone only. And then the top point, B for bone for neck, will be just the point at the top here. And then we want to go B for bone and grab this bone, I, and these points will be bound to that one. And then B for bone, there, and then I, and then these 3 points will be bound. And so, if we test it, I can move my shoulder up and down now, and the shoulder moves with it. And when I move the neck, then we get a little bit of movement with the shoulder, but a lot of movement with the neck. Okay? And the shoulder works, and this arm. So now the shoulder stays with the arm as the arm moves up and down. All right, so that's the upper part of the body done. So now let's go down to the bottom, and we've got the legs, and we don't do every layer, we do the final layer. So here we've got a foot, so we're going to go down to this foot. We're going to hit B for bone, and let's grab this bone, then I, then we'll just bind the whole foot first, then B for bone, grab the ankle bone, then I, and we just want the last 3 here on the right, and we're going to bind those. Then the shin gets the whole layer bound, so we're going to bind that by layer. And then the thigh, again by layer. Then the next foot, you're going to go B for bone, hit I, bind all the points, hit B for bone, grab the ankle, and I, and bind the ankle points. Shin is bound by layer to this bone, and thigh to this bone. Then we've got next, then we got the lower thorax. So the lower thorax, let's zoom in here, B for bone, then I, and we're just going to grab all of it and bind the points. Then we're going to grab the chest bone, and no, I don't think we need anything bound to that, actually. No, we just want, so the lower thorax is just to this one. Now we go through each of these other parts. Foot, bone, points, bind. Bone, points, bind. Shin, layer to this bone, and thigh, layer to this bone. And finally, the back left leg, B for bone, I for points, bind. B for bone, I for points, and this time I'm grabbing the front and binding those. And the shin gets down to this bone. We gotta tell it layer. We're binding the full layer to this bone. The thigh, we're binding the full layer to this bone. And then the abdomen parts, those are all going to be bound to the core bone. Where did it go? Oh, I must have it as a shy bone. Whoop, there it is. So we want to bind all of these abdomens to that singular core point. So grab each segment, bind by layer, and we're just going to get zoomed in real close so that we can be sure that it's selecting that bone. It's pretty hard to do, but each segment, oops, gets bound to there. And this is so it will move with the character. Now, in my other characters, I've always added a bone for each segment of the abdomen and also for each wing, but I'm not going to do that on this one. I'm going to see that if I can adjust all of those without adding more bones. Remember, simplicity to complexity. You want to do each little thing in simplicity, so that when you're finished, you have something that's complex. So the wings are here, and I'm going to bind them simply to the chest bone. So as it moves, so will they, as far as being with the body. And there we go, our character is skeleton rigged. So all of our character skeleton is in place and should be fully functional. So let's just test all of that. The thumbs as well. Body, and see the body rotates on that abdomen. I need to fix the upper circle so that it rounds at the right point. You see here it's not rounding, so we're going to go into the lower abdomen, or lower thorax, sorry, and we need to fix that circle. So this is simply too big. Let's bring it down, probably about right there. So now, body should rotate. And I've used the same method here for the two separate parts. It's a straight cut off and a hidden line so that it still appears to be one body part. So there you can see that the rounding is much closer. Not perfect, but very good. So our character can bend and bend, and they get a crease that shows that they're bending, but they're still connected to the other part. So there we go. And then each leg should move. And I do have constraints on the shoulders and the hip bones that I've added. And again, those are needed for the final rotating around the body. If you don't do that, and when you apply digital DNA. So it's not needed for rounding the body, but it's needed for rounding the body and then employing digital DNA and keeping it functional with the body. So finally, what I want to show you is, I mentioned earlier that I needed to go in and work on the fingers, and also I need to work on the biceps, the forearms, and the legs. And the reason is because when I apply digital DNA and I make the character taller or I make the character shorter, the rotational points will distort. So to prevent them from distorting, I need to add a pin bone on each of the bones at the base of the bone, so for the next bone. So let me just show you here. Let's get to it here. So first, because I've already bound these parts to bones that I need to use pin binding, I need to go in and release the layer from the point binding and layer binding. So I'm just going through on the biceps, forearm, and thighs, shins, and removing the binding that I added earlier. So I should have done all the, when I thought of it earlier, I should have stopped then and added the points and pins, pin bones that I'm going to add. But yeah, live and learn. So once we've got all those done, we can start applying the points that we need to the parts. So the tip of each round part, where I've had a joint where we've got the half circle and it rotates on that half circle. Well, in order to keep those half circles from distorting when I go to stretch the body parts with digital DNA, I have to lock in the roundature. So here on this thumb, the roundature is this following the green circle here. So I'm going to add a pin bone right at the tip of the base there, and then I'm going to do the same on each of these fingers. So each bone here needs a pin bone added. And the middle one, add, and the forefinger, I'm going to have to zoom in here. I'm adding it to the wrong bone. Hold on. I'm going to undo with Control Z and get rid of that. And now try to add it to the middle bone here. There we go. And now the forefinger right there at the base, and we're going to add a pin bone. Now we're going to do the same thing here for the forearm. Got to select the forearm bone and then add a pin bone. That'll be our wrist pin. And then we're going to add one at the elbow. So this will be the right elbow pin. Do the same thing to the other side. Let's go into each bone and add a pin bone at the tip where it needs to have the next part rotating on it. That's the critical part. It's the part that the next part rotates. So here we use the tip of the base of the thumb, we add the pin bone, the tip of the thumb will rotate. Same here with each of these three fingers. So there's the little finger. There's the middle finger. And again, I got the wrong bone. Hold on. Control Z. And we got it added in. And finally, the forefinger. And pin bone there. And now we're going to go down to the legs and do each of the thighs at the tip of the thigh, because it's the pivoting of the next bone that matters. The thighs don't have a pivot half round because they're on the bottom of the abdomen there. So just add each of these pin bones in the ankles. And there we go. And now on the knees and the elbows, I believe I've already got the third point that I need, but I need to go in and add them on the fingers. First, we're going to remove all the strength from all those added bones. We don't want the strength affecting everything. And then we're going to start right here on the thumb. We're going to make sure that we grab the points that we need on that round, but we need a tip point that we don't have, so we're going to add it. So we're going to grab the edge here with G and then A to add. And we're going to add a point. We want it right in the center of the green. And as you can see, that's distorted our thumb base. So let me try doing it with no curve, see if it makes a difference. No, it still does it. So it doesn't matter whether I'm using curve or not, it's going to distort it. But now we hit C for curve, and we're going to go in and correct for that round on the base of the thumb, so that when the tip rotates, it rotates evenly on that perfect half circle. So we're going to adjust these Beziers for the curve so we get it just right. And we need to name this bone, and it's going to be the right thumb pin. Okay, and then we need to grab the tip bone for the thumb and we need to bind the points. So we're going to grab the bone and then we're going to bind those points, but we grab the base of the tip of the thumb as well. So now we need to grab the thumb bone tip and then bind that thumb tip back to that bone again, so that the base rotates properly. So we have to do that on each part. So there we go. The thumb is rotating properly. You can see that the overlap, we're keeping our round quite perfectly on the stroke line. And that's what we're after. That's why we have to use the half rounds on each half of an overlapping part, so that we can get that effect. Or in case of the fingers, we cut it off straight and then it looks like a single part, and it gets an automatic crease in it when we do that, which helps improve the effect of it being a finger. So I'm going to go into each of these and add the point, bind the points, then bind the tip again, and I'm just going to speed it all up so you don't have to sit and listen to me talk while I do the work. So here we go. And there we go. So that has the bones all set up properly with the pin bones that will be used during digital DNA. And I'll explain more about that when we do the digital DNA. So thank you for watching. Tune in next time. If you'd like to watch me do this live tomorrow, Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Mountain Time, I will try to complete this puppet then, hopefully in just another session, since I've got a lot of the work done already. But if not, we'll have a part 3. So see you tomorrow. Visit dangeraware.org if you can. Donate $1 or go to our patreon.com. And if you'd like to see me put our characters available on Patreon, leave a comment below and let me know.
Stranger could be the one that lives next door. Danger, danger, could be a stranger, could be the one that you adore. Watch for the things that cause alarm. Watch for the one that would do you harm. Danger, danger, could be a stranger, could be the one that lives next door. Danger, danger, could be a stranger, could be the one that you adore. Please be alert and be aware of all the dangers anywhere. Danger, danger, could be a stranger, could be the one that lives next door. Danger, danger, could be a stranger, could be the one that you adore. Stand your ground and speak out loud. Let the world know harm's all around. Danger, danger, could be a stranger, could be the one that lives next door. Danger, danger, could be a stranger, could be the one that you adore. Danger, danger. Danger, danger. Danger, danger, could be a stranger, could be the